into our studio, and on air we have with us on the line Maurice McLeod. Maurice is a writer, editor, social commentator and a Labour councillor. Maurice, good afternoon. Peace be upon you.
Hello there.
And welcome back.
How are you?
We're doing great. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here with us again. Maurice, is cancel culture distracting us from fighting against systematic racism by providing an easy way to feel like we are making a contribution?
That's an interest. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about even the concept of cancel culture. I mean, what I think different people seem to mean different things when they even say it. So, my argument, I guess, is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with being intolerant of intolerance. So not allowing any of that sort of stuff to just pass, which maybe we have done in the past without comment. Now, whether that is, criticising people for things that they say that are dodgy, basically, I think is perfectly legitimate, and that's how we as a society learn and grow. I guess the term cancel is quite dramatic. So it sounds, no one's. When I've seen it applied to, someone that's sort of, I don't know, been told off at their work for something that they've said, and I've seen it been, said to someone that's been fired and has, had their Twitter accounts closed down and all that sort of thing. But to me, they're quite different things. So it's important to, I think, to be clear about what we're even talking about when we say cancel culture. We should learn to be more polite. We should learn not to offend our fellow citizens if we can help it. And people pointing out when we've erred on that front is probably a good thing, I think.
Do you think that cancel culture can be helpful for people in marginalised communities who can now, in a way, hold people, as this cancel culture does, is holding people accountable? But these marginalised people, can they now hold people or companies accountable for actions that would have, in the past, been ignored? I mean, this is obviously what cancel culture is doing. Yeah. So will it be helpful for them, or is it helpful for them?
Well, yeah. I mean, I definitely think that's like I say, I still hesitate on the phrase cancel culture. But if we're talking about being critical of individuals or organisations when they say stuff that's offensive, then yes, I think that's very good for the marginalised communities. I know, there's a big difference between someone coming on telly and saying some stuff that's offensive and me in my flat being cross, as opposed to seeing lots of people say, oh yeah, that was out of order, and it makes you feel like, okay, good. So that offence that I'm feeling is legitimate. It's not, quite a lot of gaslighting goes on, both with anti-black racism and with Islamophobia, I believe. So it works. So, people who have those lived experiences bring them forward and say, look, this has happened to me. And up until very recently, at least, people would have gone, oh, but are you sure? Is that even racism? Maybe you were just being rude, or maybe this, or maybe that. Maybe they had a bad day. Now that maybe there's more of a societal disapproval, I mean, that's how society changes, to be honest. Society doesn't necessarily change by the laws, it changes by cultural norms changing. It used to be culturally normal to be quite abusive to homosexual people or gay people or whatever. That, to some extent, has changed in this country, and it changes by society changing and saying, we don't want that anymore. That doesn't reflect us anymore. Yeah. And if the same sort of thing is happening with racism and Islamophobia now, then I think that's a very good thing.
Do you think then, so the question which naturally arises is whether, as a society, we've become too sensitive, or we're just less tolerant towards views which are maybe were the norm before, but now they're not.
Yeah, I don't agree with the too sensitive line. I think that we, when I say we, I mean any marginalised group, has every right to stand up for itself when it feels attacked. And maybe in the past that didn't happen. So, I mean, I grew up I'm fairly old. I grew up in the 70s and 80s and all that sort of stuff. I remember Jim Davidson and all sorts of ridiculous stuff that used to be on TV. And if you'd even say, "No, I didn't like that," people would go, "Oh, what's wrong? Can't you laugh at yourself? Oh, you've got no sense of humour. It's all a joke. Come on."
Yeah.
We've moved on from that now, and I think that's great. I think it's good that people don't have to sort of just suffer in silence. When
allow
things
abusive
happen anymore.
comments. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm glad that it's much more normal now to speak up about them and to say, "Look, this made me feel like this, and that's wrong. Why? How dare you treat me in that way?" I mean, that's great. I think that's a good thing. So I don't think it's society being oversensitive. As you say, I think it's a lack of tolerance for intolerance anymore. We've run out of patience for just putting up with stuff, and that's good.
Do you think then we should be looking to be, in a way, compassionate instead of punishing people, so that through this compassionate behaviour we can reform people who have or are, in a way, have tendencies to be abusive? Should they be punished or should they be reformed?
I think we should always strive. I think we should always be... Still there?
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. I think we should always be striving for compassion. That's the sort of that's the sort of society that we want, so that's how we should act. Having said that, I was interested just before I came on when you were talking about what's the purpose of punishment? Is it to punish someone, or is it to reform them? I think there is a third bit. There's a third role for punishment, and that's protection of everybody else. So, you'll lock up, a violent person because not just to punish them and not just hopefully to make them get better, but also to protect the rest of us from that person's violence.
Of course.
Now, I think it's the same when it comes to these, offensive comments. If someone's repeatedly putting offensive comments out, yes, you can say, "I'll try and understand and I'll try and work out where your anger is coming from. You obviously don't know me, so what's your reason for being so angry about the colour of my skin or whatever?" And yes, I can try to be as understanding of that as I want, but there is also a step where that person needs to stop doing harm to the community. So if someone... So I'm not going to sit down and smile with someone and try to be understanding when they're, provoking violence. If someone's rabble-rousing and is encouraging people to beat up Muslims or beat up black people or do something along those lines, yeah, on some level I want to understand where they're coming from and I want to be compassionate, but I also just want them to stop. I want them to stop doing that so that the people that I care about aren't in danger. So yes, we need to be compassionate, but you can, to my mind, I mean, my mum always used to say, you only really forgive someone when they regret what they did. So you can't. There's no point saying, "Oh, I forgive you," and yes, I'm compassionate. If they don't think what they did is wrong and they're going to carry on doing it, then really you're just enabling them. So
there has to be sincerity.
Compassion. But it comes it comes with sincerity. It comes with a bit where someone goes, "Oh gosh, you know what? I think some of the stuff I've been saying is probably harmful." And at that point, oh my gosh, then you take them in and you say, "Thank you, brother. I understand." And yes, and you try to bring them hopefully further into the light, and that's great. But I think it's hard to do that when they haven't, before the bit where they realise they've done anything wrong. Before they're sorry, it's very hard, I think, to be compassionate.
Of course. And we know when individuals have committed such offences where maybe they're not feeling remorseful or they're not having that sincerity of what they've done is wrong. And then let's say if they're working in a company and the company's fired them because of what they've done. Do you think companies are simply virtue signalling when they fired people because of their offences, or is it from the pressure that because it's this tendency that someone's made an offence or said something which is harmful or abusive to someone else, or maybe in the past it could be let off, but now because of the pressure of society, they're going to have to fire them?
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations like this many times. So my view is that if someone, especially if someone's a repeat offender, and I don't mean if someone I don't know, tweet something and it can be misconstrued and it's a one-off tweet and, you know, and then they apologise and delete it. That's one thing. Someone that does this sort of thing a lot and is always posting things and is always, you know, doing that sort of thing and then comes to public prominence for some reason. You know, someone sees them or they tweet at someone famous or whatever and they're now a media story. I can understand if I ran a company, I wouldn't want someone who had those views and who acted in those ways. I wouldn't want them representing my company. I'd also be concerned, as I was saying earlier, about for the other people that work in the company. Maybe there are black people or Asian people or whatever in my company who I feel keeping this person on board is actually an insult to those people because then they feel less valued or they feel, oh, well, if the boss thinks that this person isn't even worthy of firing, then maybe the boss agrees with some of these comments or statements. So I think you know, you could be cynical and brush it off as virtue signalling, or you could say that, you know, it's pressure from the outside. I think both of those things are probably partially true. But also, you know, looking at it from the most generous way, I'd say companies are thinking, how do we want to be perceived in the world? This person works for our company. Does this person now represent the way that we want to be seen? And if that person doesn't, then I think they're perfectly within their right to say, you know what, it's a free world. You can have those views. You can spout that. You just can't do it if you work for me. So thank you. On you go. I don't think that's too much, to be honest.
Yeah, and of course, it also, like you mentioned, it depends, like your mum said quite rightly as well, that whether that person is remorseful, whether that person is sincere, then of course that company can also, in its own way, maybe giving some sort of public statement out and apologising, unless it's a serious offence. Then of course, I don't think any company would let someone off the hook just by that. But I mean, moving on to the freedom of speech, which of course has now where people are unable to find the line. Where does respect lie in the parameters of freedom of speech?
Yeah, that's such a thorny issue, isn't it? It's something that, you know, I'm a journalist by trade. I've been a journalist for like 30 years, and I often write comment articles which are deliberately provocative. You know, you don't want to write something and people just go, you want to write people and they go, oh, I agree or we disagree. So, you know, you've got to be relatively controversial to do that. I think that there's a mass, so I'm, you know, I'm a real advocate of freedom of speech. I believe that, you know, there are very few things that we are left in control of in this sort of in this world that we live in at the moment. You know, it feels like, you know, you're told when to go to work, but what you should be able to control is what you say and what you know, your thoughts and expressing your thoughts. Now, as much as I believe that, I also believe, and this isn't maybe a legal point. It's just like, why would you want to offend somebody? So I'll get into conversations where someone, maybe a white friend, will say, oh, but why can't I use the N-word? They use it in rap songs. Why can't I use it? It's freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And my question is always, you know, there's legally, of course you can use it. It's a word. It's a number of sounds that come out of your mouth. Of course you can do that legally. But why do you want to? If I tell you that upsets me, why do you still want to do it? That means you want to upset me. So that's a different question. It's not so much, you know, am I allowed to say this or allowed to say that? It's
deliberately harming someone.
Yeah, and I've had that in mind, you know, when I've said something, or, you know, I grew up in South London council estates, and there's things that I might say or might think that I've sort of said, and someone said, oh, that's a bit dodgy because of X, Y, or Z, or have you thought about this community, or have you thought about that? And I spit back and I go, oh, I'd never actually made that connection. It was just a thing that I said. I never thought that. Right, gosh, yeah. And I will try not to say that again in the future. That's not because I'm some saint. It's because you know, why would you deliberately want to upset somebody?
Yeah.
So you know, I mean, this argument's been going for a while, since the 80s, with political correctness gone mad. All political correctness is just considering other people and trying not to upset someone. What's wrong with that? Hopefully you don't need laws to be nice. You know, I'm very much for us examining what we say and the impact. And it doesn't mean jump into being overly defensive. You know, I could say something, oh God, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise that was I didn't realise that had that connotation, or I didn't realise that was the origin of that phrase or that saying. Now that I do, I will not use it again because I don't want to offend you. So it seems like quite a simple thing that gets blown up into this, oh, we're not allowed to say anything.
Yeah.
You're allowed to say whatever you want. Just try not to be unpleasant to people.
Yeah, I mean, if only everyone in the world was caring and sensitive to that extent, then of course, then we wouldn't have any issue at all.
This is true. This is true.
Maurice, thank you very much for coming on. Been a pleasure having you on again. And we hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I always enjoy it.
Bye-bye.